All right, and we are live. Mr. Delfino, the Dom father himself. How are you?
Miss Shafer, the Chief Executive Officer herself. How are you?
You know what? I'm gonna tell you what, this is the highlight of my week. I I
I
have a
hear that
special love
often.
for you. Do you? Do you
Yeah, no, not really.
I just checked earlier. Your latest, the last live that we did a couple years ago, you were the chief revenue officer of a different company, different, very large tech company, and I think you're just under 20,000 views just on YouTube alone. I think you're at about 100 and I have to check again, 115,000 impressions on LinkedIn. It kind of went mini viral in our
Well,
industry.
I'm
So
looking for my royalty check. I don't see it here.
it's in the
Yeah,
mail. It's in
in
the
the mail.
mail. Yeah, just hold your breath. It'll be right there.
Okay.
So you were so generous to offer to do a part two, and I thought, what would be better than just a rapid fire of let's pick your brain and ask you the hardest questions that I want to ask other leaders too, but they're too scared to answer. Are you up for it?
Of course, I'm up for it, Sabrina.
Just enjoy you so much. So before I kind of get into it, there might be some folks who don't know you. If you don't, follow Dom, get to know him, read his stuff. But for those who don't know you, give us a quick blurb about who you are.
I mean, look, career-wise, the Chief Revenue Officer for Google Cloud cybersecurity business. I've been here now 2 years, and it's been, such an exciting journey. Very fast-growing business. We're doing amazing things with our customers around the world. Digital natives, mid-market customers, Fortune 5,000 customers, and nation states around the world as well. So it's always, we have a little theme. We call it giving good a chance, right? And obviously, I just ran into a friend of mine Sunday afternoon. One of my neighbors who happens to be the CEO of a paint company, right? And they got breached, and their data was all encrypted with ransomware, and the attackers are holding them hostage for a $10 million payment, right? So these are the things we're trying to prevent, and we see this in orders of magnitude everywhere, right? Where it's your grandmother getting the text that your UPS package is late. That's a bad link, or you see this in every scale of everyday life. Considering how digitally connected we are now, so I think it's a fascinating segment of the market to be in. And we get to see a lot of things, good and bad, day in and day out. And I've got a phenomenal team, and we have a phenomenal engineering and product management team and set of products as well. So it's an exciting space to be in, and I'm grateful to be here.
Can you talk about, because I have the advantage of hearing what people say behind your back, and I got to tell you, also one of my favorite things. It's so fun, and it's
Yeah.
99% good. The
Yeah.
1%, I think, what do they know? But what I will say is most consistently is your leadership. And second to that is just how on target you are, just on the nose you are when it comes to your numbers. Can you speak quickly to the growth that you've seen in the 2 years you've been a CRO at GCS?
I mean, we're growing orders of magnitude at the rate of the market, right? So, we're a public company, so I can't go into any details. But, and it's just if I look at it relative to 2 years ago when I started, I think we probably had somewhere between 20 and 30 sellers globally, and we're over 250 now, right? We probably had about the same amount of customer engineers, and we're just north of 200 now. So that's a lot of growth in 24 months. I had a full head of hair 24 months ago, Sabrina, and no wrinkles either. But it's been exciting, and we've been able to attract some just stellar talent on the team as well,
and some truly incredible customers. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
I get the advantage of seeing
Yeah.
firsthand some of the things that you guys are doing, and it's incredible and it's exciting. So Yeah.
And I think, Sabrina, if we look at the market in technology as a whole, I, I think technology often evolves and is rarely invented, right? So I think we invent something, and for the next X amount of years, we get iterative gains on that invention. So if I look at, whatever, my iPhone or my Android phone, right? What's the difference between the iPhone 3 and the iPhone 15, right? Or the iPhone 2, whatever the first one was, right? Yeah, we got a bigger screen, we got a faster processor, we got a better camera, we got more memory. But other than that, it's pretty much the same. So, I think from time to time, you see these leapfrog innovations, and then you see iterations on top of that innovation for some number of years. It might be 5, it might be 7, it might be 10 years. And I think sometimes, and I've seen this and been part of this before at other companies, is when you sit back and you look at a fairly mature market that's established, it's still growing, but it's an established market, meaning there's no white space, right? Everybody has some solution for whatever this product area or outcome that they desire is. When you sit back and you observe that and you say, okay, this whole market is doing this way, can I innovate something that really changes the way the market does that thing? And I think, AI is going to play a mega role in that now. And, we're in the very, very early stages of that thus far, Sabrina. Maybe the embryonic stage of AI. And I think, you see, just what we've released, as it relates to Google Cloud Security, really starting in sort of this assistance mode, moving to some type of semi-autonomous mode. And I don't know that there'll ever be a fully autonomous mode, like, it's just going to run your cybersecurity for you. Probably not the case. But if the rate and pace that we see threats and breaches continue to increase as they have been, you're not going to be able to out-hire this problem, right? So right. It's about, getting to this, varying stages of semi-autonomous levels that allow you to focus the talent on the right areas and have some problems being taken care of via AI as well. So I think we've had the privilege of looking at how customers operationalize these environments for very, very many years now and saying we can do some things significantly differently and way better. And I think that's really the thrust for the growth in our business, right? At the end of the day, if you can be the greatest salesperson in the world, you have to go to market on the back of product and the outcomes that the customers desire, and you have to be able to deliver on them. And I think that's why we are where we are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This is not about replacing people's jobs. It's about giving them the data and information. Who better when it comes to data than Google, who ingests the internet, 4 times a day or something like that? I mean, it's pretty incredible. It's about helping give them tools to be successful and to be able to prioritize their time. Yeah, completely agree. Well, are you ready for a rapid fire?
Sure, go for it.
Right. Okay. Let's start big, because this is the Dom Father. You don't putz around. I want to know, what's your biggest fear? What's your biggest fear or your biggest failure?
Well, let's take those two separately, because I'm not sure about the biggest fear, but definitely I think, if I look back at how I was earlier in my career, I can definitely look back and see some big mistakes, right? And I would say probably the biggest one, and one maybe two, I would say, and they may intersect to some extent as well. One is, you should never make an emotional business decision, right? Like when your emotions are running high, you're angry, you're upset, somebody, did something to get your emotions going. It is not the time to make a business decision. And I've definitely made some emotional business decisions in my past that were mistakes, right? And, luckily I was able to move on from them or recover from them, depending on how you look at it. But and I have a rule now that, when I'm done working for the day, and, that's usually not till pretty late anyway. It might be 8 o'clock at night. It might be 9 o'clock at night. Once that that time passes, I will not read email again, right? Because somebody will send you an email that made you angry, and now you're going to think about it all night and not sleep. And I have enough trouble sleeping already. So I think you really, when something confronts you that raises your emotions, that gets you upset, that gets you angry, that's hurtful, that's harmful, whatever it is, it's the time to go through a little bit of a period of Zen before you react to that. Okay. It's time to find your Zen. And I'm not a big yoga person, but in case you didn't know that.
Shocked to hear you say this.
Let me take a deep breath. Let me step back. Let me step away. Let me clear my head, because the response that I want to have to this is probably not a smart response, right? It's probably an emotional response. So I think that's one element of it. And I think the other element is a combination of rushing to judgment or not having the appropriate data, right? So let's say you work for me and you say, "Hey Dom, I wanted to get this quote approved, and this somebody to approve a path, they're just being a jerk and they're not approving it for me." Instead of me calling up the guy and say, "Hey, why aren't you approving that path?" Did I ask the questions that I needed to ask before I took action, right? Okay, Sabrina, well, tell me a little bit more. What went on? Did you talk to them? Did you pick up the phone? Did you have a meeting with them? Did they request it? Oh, they asked you to give them this data and you didn't, and you just wanted them to approve the quote anyway. So I think that's another area as a leader. And it's typically your own team that can get you riled up on a topic of, some process doesn't work right, or, some cross-functional organization is not doing their part, where you can rush to judgment and react without having all of the data. So I think those are two things, and they can sometimes be intertwined. And I think those things can wind up being anywhere from slightly embarrassing to career limiting for you, right? So I think those are two things. And I think, as you go through this multiple times, like I sometimes say, look, I don't know these things because I'm smarter than anybody else. I know them because I've made the mistakes before, right? And I think you learn through some of this of experience of, I had something similar happen to me a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and I reacted like this and it didn't go well. So therefore, I need to make sure that when a similar situation arises again, I deal with that in a different manner than I did historically. So,
and I think,
okay, go ahead, Sabrina. I'm sorry.
No, I'm curious. I thought you were done. I want to hear the rest. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and I think it's sort of a similar story. What's your biggest fear? I think just generally it's failure, right? Now, some people will always ask, do you love winning or do you hate losing? So I would say I love winning, right? I don't think about losing because I love winning. So I'm fighting to win all the time, and I'm not thinking about losing. You're going to lose some things sometimes, right? So, do I have a fear of failure? No, I just love winning more or success more, right? And I think more people need to measure themselves by success, right? Not by power and money. If you're successful, you'll get money, right?
Yeah.
If power is what motivates you, you probably should check your ego.
Or a psychiatrist.
Or go to politics, right? There's a whole market for that, right?
That's funny. That's interesting. I didn't know what you were going to say there. I think we all can relate to, I've certainly let folks on my team rile me up. I mean, when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, guilty. But what I'm most fascinated by is your self-reflection to say, these are the areas where I've really failed, because so many of us repeat our mistakes and blame other people or blame the situation or blame the company or blame your boss or blame whatever, where you go, no, I got too riled up there. This was on me. This is what I can change about it. And I think that's what ties into your fear, is because the way to success is through that reflection. What can I do about this? What can I control about this situation?
And I think one thing that can be frustrating for people, Sabrina, is, your sales organization is the easiest team to hold accountable in the entire organization, right? Every 90 days, we could measure you 90 different ways. What'd you do in terms of performance versus plan? What was your year-over-year growth? What were your gross margins? What were your net margins? What's your expense to revenue ratio? How'd you do in product A, B, C, D, and E? How'd you do in Americas? How'd you do in EMEA? How'd you do in LATAM? How'd you do in Japan? How'd you do in the Asia Pacific region? Every 90 days, full set of data, front and center. There's no hiding from it, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's not so easy to hold other organizations accountable, right? Like, how do you measure HR on a rolling 90-day basis, or legal, or finance? Now I do think there is a challenge where, it's very easy to be held accountable when there's a number tied to your head. I do think we need to find ways to hold other people accountable. And I think that can be a frustration for a lot of sales organizations. It's like, well, you didn't deliver on the number. Well, you didn't deliver on the product, right? Like, A precedes B. So if you don't get A, you're not going to get B. And nobody goes back and says, well, okay, what's your accountability level for not delivering on your piece to make the organization a broader success? So, I certainly feel an extreme level of accountability from my organization and for my business. And I think sometimes I expect that to be the same all the way around. And I think, one of the things I realized is that I need to moderate my expectations a little bit.
That's interesting. Not a question I was expecting, but I have to go there. What do you mean? Because I think something that you and I have in common, and I think a lot of kind of folks in our industry, especially at your level, have insanely high expectations. But I never want to change that ever.
Well,
so what do you
my
mean
expectations of myself and my team are not going to change, right?
Okay.
That doesn't mean I can it's fair for me to put my bar on everybody else. Their leaders and their organizations have to set their bar for their organization, right? So just because my bar is high, I'd like everybody's bar to be as high as mine, right? I can assure you my bosses have very high bars too, and their expectations are very high. I think, we play a team sport here, right? There's no just like, okay, sales saved the day, or engineering saved the day, or support saved the day. You're playing a team sport, and you'd like everybody to have a very high bar. But it's not my job to set the bar for those organizations. It's their leaders' jobs, right? So, and they may be different philosophically and stylistically, and it's part of the way business goes, right? Is, I'm willing to set expectations and hold my team accountable and set a very high bar for them. You got to be careful about somebody with high expectations thinking that you're the one that gets to set the expectations for everybody, because you're not.
Oh, that's good.
Does that make sense?
Yes, completely. And I'm dying to dig into it, but I'm watching the clock. I mean, you are truly just one of the most, first of all, I think it's part of your authenticity and openness, because you are just so real. And you are like this in just about every single engagement I've seen, whether it's with customers, friends, team members, leaders on your team. But you're just so open and authentic and wise, and you're just willing to share it. So I'm like, I have so many questions for you. I've got a whole list here. So, all right, it does. And we'll put a pin on that for part 3. How about that? We'll come back in a few years. Part 3.
Okay. All right, great. Always great to spend some time with you.
I'll tell you.
Thank you for all the work you guys are doing at Transformation Continuum. It's a huge help to us here as well. And these are always fun to do, so I enjoy doing them with you.
Oh, it's such a blast. And it's truly, I made my leadership team watch your last live twice. And then we did a gamification around it, because there are so many nuggets in here. And I found myself watching it. And that's when I said, my leadership needs to watch this. And so I do want to ask you just a couple more questions. Like I said,
sure.
a rapid fire. But again, I just, the insights that you give, it's like these Dom-isms. I don't know if anyone's coined that yet. But
maybe someday when I retire, I'll write a book, Sabrina.
There you go. Just a transcript of all the things you've said, all your meetings, So I want to know, okay, so you have led massive organizations. You've seen tremendous successes. what got you here?
And I know you and I talked about this privately, but I think, my favorite business book, which was introduced to me by a former executive coach I had at Cisco, a woman named Nilofar Godes, who I'm actually talking to next week. We're going to catch up. Introduced me to a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And it's written by a gentleman named Marshall Goldsmith. And I think fundamentally it speaks to the ability to reinvent yourself and to adapt to different situations. But I do think that some people think they can just keep doing the same thing over and over. If the thing they did produced very good results, they think they can just continue to do that over and over and over again, and it will continue to produce good results. I think it's totally the opposite of what you need to do. I think, but it's like, oh, well, what's your playbook? Well, I don't have a playbook that I just carry around from job to job or company to company because, the scenario, the situation, the culture, the market, the TAM, the position you're in needs to dictate the playbook. And you need to be the leader to recognize that, and I've had, very difficult conversations with some people on my team now, just saying, hey, you just went from this level in the company to this level in the company. My expectations are totally different now, right? Mm-hmm. So just because you are a top performer at level 8, you're going to be average at level 9 until you figure out how to operate at level 9, right? Mm-hmm. And if you think that just doing what you did at level 8 to get you to level 9 is going to get you from level 9 to level 10, it's not, right? Expectations have changed. So you have to adapt your skill set, your playbook, your relationships, your communication style, your leadership style, your operational abilities start to become significantly more important and significantly more burdensome the larger the business and the larger organization you run, right? And most of us don't like that aspect of the job. We don't like what's loosely referred to as the admin work. I don't love doing annual operating plans. It's not the most exciting part of my job, right? The most exciting part of my job is working with my team, my customers, my partners. That's always the most exciting part of my job. But I can't do that 100% of the time and ignore all the other stuff because I'll be failing my team and the business for a lack of strategy and planning, right? So I think your ability to adapt yourself as the circumstances change, as your job roles change, as your amount of responsibility changes, the size of your business changes, the culture of the company changes, the market dynamics change, the competitors change, the customers change, is crucial for your continued success and growth, right? If you're like doing the same thing you did 5 years ago and expecting the same results you had 5 years ago, eventually it's going to come back and crush you. Yeah. It's just not going to work. Right. And I see it all the time. Right. And I see it all the time. People were great as individual contributors and then maybe they were great as managers. But then sort of they become good as a second line manager and bad as a director. Why? Like, how does somebody who was such a high performance individual as an individual contributor or a first line manager, or how does somebody who's wildly successful at one company go to a different company and is a total failure? Right. Right.
What do you think it is? Do you think it's that they're not investing in reinventing themselves? Do you think some people just are good in some spots and, they're good at certain roles, but not at others? Or is it a combination? What do you think it is?
Well, I think it is, it's a different business. Mm-hmm. Why would doing the same thing give you the same result? Right. And even if you go from Google to Microsoft to Amazon, those are 3 very different companies with 3 very different cultures, with 3 very different processes and systems and tools and strategies and visions for what they want. Like, so just because you were good at, Dom, you're really great at running Google's cybersecurity business. If you go to Palo Alto, don't expect to just do the same thing. And have the same level of success, right? Like you've got to adapt. You've got to constantly be reinventing yourself, as a business person, as a leader, in terms of somebody who engages customers and partners. or, you may get lucky, right? You may get a move from one position to another or one company to another where, the circumstances are very similar and you can run the same playbook, right? But that's not going to get, you got to start thinking 2 and 3 and 4 steps down the road, right? Like, I'm sure, Sabrina, what I do now, if I went to be a CEO and tried to just ignore everything else and just run sales and the company will be great, that probably wouldn't be a good recipe for me or for the company, would it?
Right. You're exactly right.
Somebody's got to make sure employees are getting paid every week, right? And somebody's got to make sure, we filed our taxes and all the other unglamorous things that you are responsible for as the CEO. So I think that's the biggest mistake people make. I've referred many people to that book. I think I've bought in batches of them and sent them to my team members. I've had several of my team members here read it and self-reflect on it. And I think when you read it and you actually read it and understand it, there's a lot of self-reflection that goes on when you read that book. So,
okay, which takes me to my last question, my last rapid fire question. What are you specifically doing to reinvent yourself? Like, how do you invest in yourself? At Continuum, we do these things called investment blocks, and you work with your direct manager. You have your own independent time where you pick a skill, or maybe you and your manager pick a skill, something that you want to know more about, whether it's technical or a soft skill or you name it. And you work on it with yourself, you work on it with your manager, and you work on it as even my leadership team works on it. How are you doing that? Especially given the incredibly extensive, list or laundry list of your responsibilities.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I rely on my mentors that I have, that I talk to with, a pretty respectable level of frequency, where we'll have discussions around things that I feel I should be doing better on, that I'm not, things that I feel that I'm doing well, and how do I replicate that success in other aspects of my role. I think, by the way, once you get to a certain level too, you're not going to get a lot of that, lovey-dovey coaching from your immediate managers. I do a lot of it via peer learning. Okay. So I have a lot of one-on-one private conversations with my peer in the organization about, that become brainstorming sessions effectively. And, sometimes they're happening on the golf course, right? They're not happening in the conference room, or they're happening at dinner, or they're happening over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine or a beer. And we're talking about big, hairy problems and how to solve them. And I think, that's where I let myself not have the ideas. And I do more listening than I do talking. Like, how would you do this? Why would you do it that way? Why do you think that's a good idea? Why do you think I have a bad idea? And I sit there and listen and absorb. And I think you take a lot from those conversations, especially when those people are in different capacities in the company. Okay. They're not another peer sales leader, maybe with a different geography or a different product portfolio. They're an engineering leader, or they're a marketing leader, or they're a human resources leader, or they're a finance leader, right? So I think that helps me get away from my core competency a little bit and look at things from a different angle.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes, just the same theme kind of keeps reoccurring, is dropping the ego, listening, asking questions. I think what you're especially great at is identifying what the problem is, and then finding people who can help you get the right answer faster and better than anyone else.
Yeah. And, Sabrina, it's interesting because I think ego is the worst thing you could have, right? I think, your ego is your own worst enemy, right? Because it gives you blind spots when you have an ego, right? When it gives you an inability to be vulnerable. It gives you an inability to take feedback. And it also masks what true success really is, right? And what true success really is results and track record, not title, not power, not money, right? And I always look at, when you're going to hire somebody, what's the first thing you look at? I look at their track record, right? Past performance may be a good indicator of future performance, right? It may not be in some cases, but typically is. And I think, some people actually spend too much time managing their career. There are too much conversations about mentors and sponsors and coaching. You want to get ahead in your career? Produce results, right? Establish a track record. And by the way, sustained results over an extended period of time are the best things for the future of your career and your ego. And you know, look, Sabrina, I'm doing this long enough right now. I'm not looking for the next position, right? Now, the company came and asked me to say, hey, Dom, we need you to go do something different. I'm in it for the company and I'll do what the business needs me to do. But I'm not motivated by title or money or organizational size and how many direct support you have and what is your span of control and what is, those things are irrelevant. It's just about being successful, producing results that are meeting or exceeding the business's expectations. That is the best ingredient for your future success.
Yeah. And I told you this offline in a private conversation. I've had multiple people tell me that's your secret to your success. That truly is. And just how good you are at really predicting, but also executing. I think it's a combination.
You know what? Why is that, Sabrina? Why is that? Because it's not about me. It's not about, look, I'm one person. How many deals could I run around and close? And how much revenue could I bring in? And how many customers can I talk to in a week? And partners can I talk to in a week? It's about your team as a leader. It's not about you. So the sooner you figure it out and you say, okay, I'm going to be measured by the results that my team produces, because I certainly can't go do $1 billion or $2 or $3 billion in business on my own. So my job is to make these people successful. And in turn, that delivers the success that I need to be successful. Right. So this is why I say ego is your worst enemy. That's what we should make the title of this session.
Ego is your worst enemy. All right. There you go. You heard it first. Dom, and you talked a little bit about this in your last live. I will link that below because it's truly exceptional. I mean, truly, truly exceptional. Dom, I know we're way over. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Not just for your teams and your customers and your partners, but me personally. You're an incredible friend, an incredible mentor. And I appreciate you as a human very much. So thank you.
Well, likewise, Sabrina. Thank you so much for having me again. And I'm sure I'll see you soon.
I'll see you soon. All right. Till next time.